I'd like to ask the Minister his views on how quickly the food sector will be enabled to remove single-use plastics and if the Circular Economy Bill can be strengthened further in relation to different types and uses of plastics.
Thank you, Lanscan, and also thank you, Deputy Harrigan, for the question. Our Waste Action Plan for a Circular Economy that was published in 2020 commits to substantially reducing waste from packaging and single-use plastics over its 5-year lifetime. These steps include a deposit return scheme for plastic bottles and aluminium cans, and then the introduction of a levy on disposable coffee cups, and other measures to encourage the use of reusable cups before an eventual ban on those disposable cups altogether. There will be supports to increase the use of recycled materials in packaging, and there will be measures to significantly reduce single-use plastic items such as non-medical wet wipes, hotel toiletries and packaged condiments. And this builds on the measures that were already taken since transposition of the Single-Use Plastics Directive last year, you'll remember, in July. The Circular Economy Bill 2022 includes powers to introduce new environmental levies on single-use items. These levies will work in a similar way to the plastic bag levy, with the proceeds ring-fenced in a Circular Economy Fund for projects relating to environmental objectives. The various levies will be introduced incrementally. The initial focus will be the introduction of levies on disposable hot drinks cups this year. The objective of the new levies is not to raise revenue, and indeed the aim of introducing them is to encourage the use of reusable alternatives so that the consumer never incurs the levy in the first place. To support this development and to further reduce any costs associated with the levy on consumers and business, I intend to specifically target a portion of the income from the new environmental levies towards projects and schemes which will increase the availability of reusable products and packaging. Thank you.
I thank the Minister for his response. Single-use plastics represent one of our biggest environmental challenges, and their rapid increase in production has overwhelmed our world's ability to recognise the problem, and the price we now pay for whatever small convenience single-use plastics provided to us by the food sector has led to a throwaway culture where we now see plastic everywhere on our streets and in our rivers and our seas. Single-use plastic accounts for nearly half of the plastic we produce every year, and so many of these originate, as you said, in our coffee shops, in our convenience stores, and include water bottles and straws and cups and utensils, and have a lifespan of just hours or minutes even. But of course they exist, they continue to exist for hundreds of years afterwards. So much of this is unnecessary, and there are already better alternatives available of a similar cost. It doesn't just affect urban areas like my own, but anyone who walks in even the smallest rural boreen will see ditches full of plastic waste around the country. I very much appreciate the Waste Action Plan for a Circular Economy represented a step change to our approach to waste in Ireland and moving to minimise the amount of waste. But the food sector particularly, and plastic producers themselves, must be held responsible for the products and packaging they create. Recycling alone will never solve this problem, and the sector must undergo a fundamental shift in how they bring their products to people.
Thank you, Deputy. So last July, with the Single-Use Plastics Directive, 10 of the most common items that wash up on the beach that are single-use plastics were banned. And that was done on a Europe-wide basis. So, for example, plastic knives and forks, and plastic plates, and plastic earbuds. And I went into the shop a week later just to make sure that they weren't on the shelves, and they weren't. So these things actually work. The deposit return scheme focuses on one particular type of plastic, PET, clear plastic bottles, but it can be expanded to other types. And when we get this working for PET and aluminium, I'm certainly going to be looking at other types of plastics, so for example, HDPE, which is used to make milk cartons. Better than recycling is to avoid altogether. I see some of the supermarkets, some of the major names, you can go in and you can refill a bottle with orange juice, and then smaller producers have no packaging. There are some specialist shops that are offering that you bring in your own packaging and you refill, and I'd like to see that become the norm in supermarkets. Yesterday I was invited to visit a cafe on Pearse Street called Bread, where they had eliminated all disposable cups already off their own bat, and they said they were making money out of it because it makes sense for business not to be paying for waste to be removed. So I think that
Thank you, Minister. Lastly, as an inner city representative, I'd like to touch on a related but very important topic, which is the privatisation of waste collection services. In my view, it simply hasn't worked. and I would like to see the remunicipalisation of waste collection services. In my constituency of Dublin Central, this would mean bringing it back under the control of Dublin City Council, with the aim of providing a much improved service. And I'm particularly thinking around, terrace housing, streets that are quite constrained, and the use of perhaps collective waste services. I'm regularly contacted by constituents in relation to this issue, and particularly issues they're having with private waste collection services, whether they are not collecting waste when they should, collecting late at night or not at all, whether the inadequate plastic bags they provide are then left outside people's homes for collection and are being opened by wildlife and gulls and foxes. The list of issues goes on, and we need to fundamentally rethink the consequences of the privatisation model of this important service. And I think we need to begin to move to work towards publicly provided waste collection services that deal with households in all situations.
In regard to the collection of, or sorry, the privatisation of waste collection, as the Deputy Harrigan asked about. So I think that this is actively being discussed in Dublin City Council. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but I know that the councillors are coming to a view on that, and I'm interested to follow that. And in our CCTV measures that we're going to bring in the Circular Economy Bill, they don't just apply in rural beauty spots. They also apply in inner city areas which have problems, ongoing severe problems with dumping for example, in the North Inner City, and I'm aware of that. And I know there's a particular problem with apartment blocks. How do you manage shared facilities? How do you make sure that people are sorting their waste in those? How do you manage for people who don't have driveways and are in terraced areas and are leaving bags in the street and those are being ripped out? And we need to look at the examples in other countries because they have similar topology of their layout of their architecture and what we can learn from them and how we can do that right.